Do you hate pin basting your quilts? Well, I do. So I've come up with an alternative. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to make the multi-purpose quilt spray. Hi, I'm Kim Jamieson-Hirst of Chatterbox Quilts. And over the last several years, I've helped thousands of quilters spray baste their quilts using the multi-purpose quilt spray. So this is a spray that you can make yourself in your home using common ingredients. Now, I did several videos several years ago on this spray, but I've had a lot of questions, so I thought it was time to do a new video and answer more of those questions. So I'm going to take you right back to the beginning. We're going to learn how to make the quilt spray, and then I'm going to give you some additional information on it. Now you want to stick around to the end of this video because I'm going to tell you other ways you can use the multi-purpose quilt spray and also offer you a free download. Now, what do you need to make the multi-purpose quilt spray? Common household items for the most part. You need some all-purpose flour. You're going to need some salt, so just regular table salt will work. You need water, so you're going to need 2 cups of water, and you also need another cup of water, so 3 cups total, but they're divided. And then you need some either rubbing alcohol, at least 70%. This one here is 99%, but 70% or higher dosage will work. And or vodka. Now just cheap vodka. We're not drinking this, okay? We're making a spray with this. And the differences between the two of these are that if you use the rubbing alcohol in the spray, you're going to get quite a medicinal smell with it. So some people don't like that, and if it bothers you, use the vodka because it has no odor to it, so the spray will be scentless. You could also add essential oils if you're using the vodka if you want to have a nice lemon or vanilla or whatever scent in your studio when you're using it. You're also going to need some other items, a pot pan that holds at least 3 cups of water, probably more, so a good sized pan, or pot I should say, a funnel. You're going to need a jar with a lid. I've got like a mason type jar here, but something that has a tight lid on it so that liquid doesn't escape from it. A whisk. You're also going to need a couple of measuring spoons, so a tablespoon measuring spoon and a half teaspoon measuring spoon. Okay, oh, and really important, you're going to need a spray bottle. I'm going to talk about that later in the video. So let's get started making this, shall we? The first thing you're going to need to do is to get your pot. Move things out of the way here so I can get this going. And then I'm going to add salt to it. So I've got a half teaspoon salt, already measured out. I'm just going to put that in. And I'm also going to take the 2 cups of water and pour that in as well. All right, put those off to the side. I'm just going to whisk this together a bit. Now, the next step is to go to the stove. So you want to take your pot to the stove and you're going to put it on a burner. You're going to turn it on high. So let's do that. Now, while that's heating up, you're going to take your mason jar and you're going to take your 3 tablespoons, is what we're using, of flour, and you want to put that in the jar. Now that I've got the flour in here, I'm going to take the 1 cup of water and put that in. I did forget to mention to you, make sure your jar can handle at least a cup of water. All right, let's get the lid on. All right, and then you're going to do some shaking, okay? So this is like making gravy, all right? You know how we do this. To thicken our gravy, we put the flour water mixture in, same thing. So I'm going to shake this up because I want to make sure I dissolve all those lumps. If your water is cold, works even better. So don't put hot water in here, use cold. So when this is all shaken up, and I don't see any lumps in there, looks pretty good, then we're going to go over to the stove and it's going to get added to the water and the salt. So let's do that next. So you can see this has come to a rolling boil. So I'm going to keep heating it until it comes to that rolling boil, and then it's time to put in the flour water mixture, whisking as I pour in. If you have a few little lumps, don't worry, but you don't want any great big ones in there, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my heat down to about medium-high, thereabouts, and I'm going to keep whisking because I don't want this to stick to the bottom of the pan or to form any lumps. So we're going to keep whisking for about 5 minutes. This will thicken up a little bit. You do not need to stir it for 20 minutes. If you have stirred it that long, way too long. 5-6 minutes should be enough. You need it to come back up a little bit to a kind of a low boil. So we'll just keep stirring it. And then I'll show you what it looks like, how thick it should be when you go to take it off. All right, so this has been on long enough here. This is about as thick as I want it to get, so I'm going to turn the stove off. And you can see how thick it is. They're kind of glutinous, gooey, kind of. It's not super, super thick, but it's thicker than when you started off, right? Okay, so the next step is to add some more things to it. So we're going to go back to the counter now. Okay, so it's a good idea to let this mixture cool down a bit before you add anything to it. Just for the sake of brevity, I'm not going to do that today, but we have these two choices, right? We've either got the rubbing alcohol or the vodka. Today, I'm going to go with the vodka. So the next thing you need to do is take the vodka, and you're going to put 1 cup into the mixture you just took off the stove, well, after it's cooled down, let's say. So about 1 cup in here. Okay, and I just want to put that down and give it a look at eye level there so I can see. I need a little bit more. Okay, that's probably good enough. And so I'm just going to put this in here. And oh, I need my whisk, which I left at the stove. Okay, so I'm going to whisk in the vodka. And of course that's going to dilute it a little bit, but don't worry about that. It's all just part of the formula. All right, so this is looking pretty good. Not to eat, of course, to use. I'm just going to put that over there. So the next thing you want to do is add it into a spray bottle, right? So there are different kinds of spray bottles you can get. Pretty much anyone works. The ones I find that work the best are ones that have an adjustable nozzle on them. So I like to have it down really fine. You want a fine mist. You don't want a big, stream of water, just a fine mist to go over. And I find ones like this one, I mean, I've had this for years and years and years, but a lot of times plant sprayers are the ones that work the best. So you would just put it in and, tighten it up, and then you can adjust the spray nozzle as to what you need when you go to use it. Now, having said that, I was just emptying out my funnel there, it's got a bit of water in it still. When you pour this in, it's probably not all going to fit in the spray bottle, okay? You can put in as much as you want, right? So let's just try and do this and see where we go. Ooh, I might get pretty darn close on this one, but that's good enough. Okay, so just gonna take that funnel out there. Make sure you leave enough room to put your sprayer attachment in. All right, so there we go. Now, what can you do with this? Let me move a few things out of the way here. Well, you can use it to baste your quilts, of course. And I get a lot of questions asked about, does it discolor the fabric? Or what happens when you spray it on your fabric? No, it does not discolor the fabric. How long can you leave it in your quilt? Well, anything you add to your quilt, any extra things you spray on it or glue on it or whatever, I always think you should remove them. So I always say to wash your quilts afterwards to remove this spray and anything else you might have put on it. But people worry about it attracting bugs. Now, I live in a dry climate. I have some samples that I have sprayed and not washed out, and I have had no issues with bugs. I've had no issues with mold, anything like that. However, if you live in a more humid climate, you might find that that's a bit of a problem. So again, wash it out of your quilt, okay? Let's see, what other questions have people asked me about? I have to think for a moment here. People wonder, how do they spray baste their quilts using this? Well, that's a really good question. And I've done a video on that. So if you look up above or in the description below, I'll provide a link to that video so you can see exactly how I spray this on my quilts. Some people have asked me about whether you can use other things other than wheat flour because they're celiac. And the answer is, I am not sure about that. I think you might be able to use cornstarch. My suggestion to you is to try it and see if it works. I myself am gluten-free, so I don't typically use wheat flour in the house, but I know other alternatives like rice flour and coconut flour, I'm thinking they probably will not work as wheat flour would, but cornstarch might. So that's something you could try yourself and see how it works. How long will this last? Well, how many quilts do you have to baste? Do you have to keep it in the fridge? No, you do not have to keep it in the fridge. So what do I do with the excess? Because we did have some excess left over. What I do with that is I would just put it in this jar, a tightly sealing jar, and just keep it in my studio. So when I run out of it in the sprayer and I need more, I could just put it in the sprayer. It's probably better in the jar than in the sprayer in some ways because it's tightly sealed. So I just keep it in my studio and I've had no issue with it. The only thing you want to do before you take it from the jar to the sprayer, just shake it really well in case any of that flour has lumped up. And the same thing goes if it is in the sprayer and you haven't used it for a while, is give it a really good shake before you use it on your quilt. Now, I did tell you at the beginning of this video that there's other ways that you can use the multi-purpose quilt spray. So I want to tell you about those, but before I do, I just want to bring your attention to the icon that you see below this video. And that is a heart with a $sign in the center of it. And that's a super thanks. That's your opportunity to support the Chatterbox Quilts YouTube channel and my small business. So you can just choose your level of support, and then that helps me to buy the items that I use to make these free videos for you. Thanks so much for your support. Now, what else can you use a multi-purpose quilt spray for? Well, it also works as a stiffener for fabric. So you can spray this on fabric, especially if you're using cutters, like fabric cutters. The stiffer the fabric, the better the cuts. So you can spray this on, iron it, and by the way, when you go to press this, whether you're basting your quilt or using it to stiffen your fabric, you want to use some parchment paper underneath your quilt. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. If you don't know what parchment paper is, you may call it baking paper. This is parchment paper. This one happens to be white. It can be different colors, but it's a non-stick type of paper, and you can put it underneath your quilt and on top of your quilt sandwich to protect your iron and protect your bottom surface that may be underneath, because you don't want to get spray all over the place, right? So you can do that. By the way, this is not a spray that you need to use out in, outside or in really well ventilated areas, unlike some of the commercial sprays that you can purchase. And unlike those sprays as well, it doesn't gum up your needle, so you don't need to worry about that either. All right, so let me get back though for a minute. I was starting to talk about stiffening that fabric, wasn't I? So you can just spray it, iron it. That's where the parchment paper idea came in. Put the parchment paper on top, press it, spray it again. So you can spray it several times, pressing between each spray until you get the amount of stiffness you want in that fabric before you use it in your cutters. One of the other questions I get asked is, can I use this on other fabrics than cotton? And the answer is maybe, but I'm not sure about that. I've only ever used it to baste my quilts or when I'm working with 100% cotton fabrics that we get at the quilt store. So can you use it on polyester type or rayon type fabrics? The answer is I'm not sure. Anytime you're wondering about some of these things, try a small sample and see how it works. So if you're using, for example, Minky on the back or Fireside, those type of products on the back of your quilt, just take a little piece, make a quilt sandwich with it, use the multi-purpose quilt spray and see if it sticks or not. That's the best way to find that out. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the video about a free download. So I have a download that includes the recipe for the multi-purpose quilt spray and how to use it, and also with some of these questions answered in it. So I invite you to download that. I'll put a link above and in the description below so you can download that and have your own copy and make your own multi-purpose quilt spray. Thanks so much for watching today. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please give it a big thumbs up, and remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified the next time I release a new video. And for more helpful quilting information, be sure to go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.